Page 104, Part 8. Feelings are very important and are therefore also extremely useful. Consequently, they must not simply be fought and eliminated. That also must not happen by means of a positive or neutral positive equalized thinking, and indeed neither with conscious nor with unconscious thoughts, which, in the latter case, are practically uncontrollable. It must never be forgotten, nor disregarded, that feelings have an existential, and thereby life-sustaining, significance and function, for which reason they are useful, and must not simply be stifled and abolished, nor manipulated in a one-sided form. In certain situations, the living environment is partly threatening for the human being, and precisely in those situations, the feelings enable a quick and automatic procedure for the processing of relevant, endogenous, or environmental stimuli according to a proven, natural, old system of valuation. With that, an immediate, life-conserving reaction is possible. As a result of that, life is also easier for the human being and is only thereby bearable at all when one thinks of the imperfect world which is uncontrollable in its diversity. For a large number of human beings, to behave appropriately in their environment would often be difficult, or even impossible, if there were no reactive feelings which simplify the matters, and which have developed in the human being for millennia, and which are passed on to the individual as a lasting inheritance, and are continually further passed on. And these reactive feelings, which simplify the matters, are individually orientated towards the basic problem. Consequently, in this form, they are of immense importance. If there were no feelings which are created by the thoughts, then the thoughts would, quote, run hot, because they would have no opportunity to discharge. Thus the thoughts need an opportunity to discharge their powers, so that they do not become excessive and do not become confusing. However, this discharging opportunity is the feelings, which are formed by the might of the thoughts, and which in turn must also discharge themselves, and for that reason they deliver their formed power to the psyche, which in turn is formed accordingly, negatively or positively, depending on just how the thoughts and the feelings are formed. Also, the psyche is not able to keep its powers obtained in this manner for itself, because it in turn also needs a discharging opportunity. Consequently, a feedback loop to the body and the consciousness is created, through which the psychical power is then expressed outwardly in accord with its negative or positive formation. Were that not the case, then the brain and consciousness, and with it the human being's world of thoughts, would become excessive, and would become confused and irrational with all the manifold flood of impressions, information, perceptions, demands for decisions, and the practical experiences and living experiences, and so forth. Feelings are an automatic help in life, for which reason the thoughts which precede them must be amply and correctly nurtured and tended, because, through their might, they form the feelings, and, as a further consequence, also the psyche. Feelings represent primary processes in the carrying out of life, which is why they must not be stifled or eliminated in any form. They therefore must only be positively influenced and changed with a neutral, positive, equalized thinking. However, they must never be forced with Gewalt, or be fought and eliminated. The human being's feelings are appropriate to his or her kind and to his or her life, and are a valuable store of practical experience which must never be underestimated in its significance. They are also characterized, not least, by human-specific reactions, such as love and affection, anxiety and fear, inhibitions, hate and repugnance, elements of impulse and threat, and many other factors. But it is not always simply the feelings which display such factors, because emotions can also have the same form. But the difference between feelings and emotions is easy to recognize for every human being if he or she directs his or her attention to them. Emotions, namely, come suddenly, like lightning, surging, exciting, and uncontrollable, whereby they are often only of short duration. However, feelings manifest slowly and are associated with a preceding thought process, quite in contrast to emotions, which are not preceded by any thoughts. To bear in mind with emotions, however, is that they lead to thought processes from which feelings then develop in according with the emotions, and indeed with long-lasting duration. An interplay thereby comes about among the emotions, thoughts, and feelings, which then often leads to actions which are connected to emotions. For example, grave acts of jealousy, hate-motivated violence, and acts of revenge, and so forth. With all of it, the human being must be conscious that not only positive thoughts and feelings are productive, rather also negative ones are, which is why the erroneous opinion of certain, quote, positive thinkers and positive writers must therefore never be held and accepted, that solely positive thoughts and feelings are life-affirming and are evolutive. Truthfully, negative thoughts and feelings, which emerge in conscious and controllable form, as well as in unconscious and uncontrollable form, are just as necessary to life as are the positive. Whether the arising thoughts and feelings are of anxiety and fear, of joy or sadness, of rage and fury, of disgust or of attraction, of sympathy or antipathy, or of courage or cowardice, they all correspond to those human basic feelings and the preceding conscious or unconscious thoughts, which for the human being are important for survival. This is a fact with which the, quote, eminent authorities of positive thinking unfortunately do not come to grips, because they do not understand that for the human being, negative thoughts and feelings are also of enormous life-supporting and life-preserving significance. Naturally, it is correct that the negative thoughts, which are Ausartungen, must be neutralized. Ausartungen means the very badly getting out of control of the good human nature, which can happen, for example, through a diversion from them by means of neutral thought material. See The Psyche by FIGU. But which does not mean that normal negative thoughts, which are important for life, are also combated. It is therefore wrong to fight the normal, quote, healthy negative thoughts and feelings, but it is therefore also wrong to assume or to support the view that thoughts alone could not produce any true feelings, because it is effectively just the thoughts alone which can create feelings. Only that this very often does not happen consciously, rather unconsciously. A large number of such unconscious processes operate daily in the human being and generate feelings, often also unconscious, of which the human being does not know the origin. And since these unconscious processes of thoughts and feelings, as well as their effect on the psyche, are not known to psychiatrists and psychoanalysts, and so forth, they are simply contested or called into question. That is equally so with the fact that exclusively the thoughts are able to form feelings. The effective fact is that feelings can only be created through conscious or unconscious thoughts, and this is not only under pronounced, most favorable conditions, rather it is so in any case. It is therefore in no way the case, as is asserted by unknowledgeable psychiatrists and psychoanalysts, that thoughts and language only co-stimulate the feelings, in certain minimal wise. And since it is a fact that exclusively conscious or unconscious thinking is responsible for the creation of feelings, it is also clear that volitionally implemented neutral positive equalized thoughts are able to fundamentally influence and change the state of the feelings. Consequently, this corresponds to no mere wishful thinking, nor to a misjudging of reality, as is claimed, for example, by psychotherapist Dr. Gunther Scheich, who in this sense believes that he must take human beings for a ride and mislead them with erroneous assertions which run counter to the truth. Thoughts create feelings, and these feelings influence the psyche, whereby in turn feedback to the consciousness is triggered, and with that, further thoughts. If the thoughts are of a conscious nature, then the feelings also arise in this form. This certainly should be clear. However, if the thoughts are of an unconscious nature, triggered by unconscious perceptions of some sort, and by an unconscious recognition, then often the feelings also function in this form. Now, that does not mean, however, that they cannot be recognized and recorded by the consciousness, because in fact, the consciousness perceives these feelings, and indeed, at the latest, when the psyche is influenced by them and delivers feedback to the consciousness. All feelings, of a conscious or unconscious nature, reflect the particular conditions and situations of life, as well as the body's impulsations and impulses of all kinds. But environmental influences also belong with those things, and many other kinds of things. And the perception of such factors triggers conscious or unconscious thoughts, through which, in turn, feelings are created, and from that arises feedback to the consciousness, directly or indirectly through the psyche, whereby, logically, new thoughts form. In this form, feelings can therefore create and influence thoughts, but the necessary prerequisite is always that a thought is first created, regardless of whether it is in conscious or unconscious form, so that a feeling comes into being. The interdependency of thoughts and feelings is enormous and extremely multi-layered, and unfortunately, the predominant connections of these processes are still completely unknown to psychiatry and psychoanalysis. Consequently, there is searching, researching, and presuming going on in wrong directions. But not only psychiatry and psychoanalysis err in this field, rather also the proponents of pure positive thinking. Unfortunately, all the proponents of these schools of thought believe that they actually know more than is presented by the actual truth of this area of spiritual teaching. As a matter of fact, the psychiatrists and psychoanalysts, as well as the proponents of the teaching of purely positive thinking, are missionaries and prophets of unreal assertions which already have a dogmatic character. But whoever sticks with such unproven dogmas, which remain unable to be proven, completely overrates the individual factors, whereby the relationship between the individual parts and the whole can no longer be grasped and cannot be understood. And whoever thinks and works along such lines can change neither the parts of a whole nor the whole itself, even when he or she believes very strongly that he or she really can do this. When until now, the reference has always been to psychiatry, psychoanalysis, or psychotherapy, then obviously these are not all the sciences which there are to cite in relation to emotions, thoughts, feelings, and the psyche, as well as the brain, and with that the consciousness. That is to say, the personality. In fact, yet other various sciences play an important role in this relationship, such as psychology and neurology, for example. Also, philosophy must not be forgotten, because it also belongs to the entire complex. Fundamentally, it must be explained yet again. All of a human being's thoughts and feelings are important for him or her, regardless of whether their nature is negative or positive, and whether it is conscious or unconscious. Manipulation of the natural state of the thoughts and feelings must never be attempted by only thinking and feeling purely positively. Everything must always be correct. Consequently, a neutral, positive, equalized thinking and the same kind of feelings must be brought about. In milder cases, this can occur, as described in the book The Psyche, as a result of a diversion from the thoughts and feelings which have a harmful effect and arise by means of Ausartung. However, if the negative thinking which equates to an Ausartung has already entered a deeper stage, and if the thoughts are thereby also severely negatively impaired, then appropriate psychotherapeutic methods should also be used. Purely positive thinking without a corresponding analysis of the psychical disturbance and without suitable psychotherapeutic measures is not to be recommended and is quite useless. Serious and profound psychical disturbance, which goes beyond the norm of self-therapy, which one has yet to deal with, requires at any rate expert advice and help in the form of suitable psychotherapy. But that does not exclude neutral, positive, equalized thinking, because it contains an enormous might by means of which the feelings can be positively influenced and changed. Therefore, it is not so, as it is claimed by psychologists, psychiatrists, psychoanalysts, and psychotherapists, that the only real promising alternative for human beings with chronic psychical problems is an individual psychotherapy. This, namely, is only a part of the whole process, because basically, neutral, positive, equalized thinking is of equal importance, because thoughts of this kind are able to influence and positively change the feelings, which is enormously important for the ill psyche's healing process, because it is the feelings which in turn determine the state of the psyche. Altogether, it is all a very active, strenuous, and lengthy process, which furthermore is fundamentally different for each human being. For every symptom of a disorder, in a particular case, there are completely different methods, procedures, and setting of Ziele, or goals, to be worked out and used, which relate to both a modification of the thoughts as well as to the psychotherapeutic measures. Of the greatest importance is the creation of a basis for a suitable therapy. That means that a basis, that is to say the required prerequisites, must first be created for a suitable therapy to which the psychically ill human being responds. However, this creation of a basis is associated with an extraordinary amount of work and effort, with very many discussions between the psychically afflicted human being and the therapist. A form of relationship must be worked out, and the psychically disturbed human being must be motivated to cooperate in the healing. Only then can he or she move on to the actual disturbance-resolving therapy, which then consists of general measures which deal with the disorder overall. One such measure is behavioral therapy, in which not only relaxation exercises and confrontation procedures are carried out, rather also processes of the reinforcement and extinguishing of the causes. But also included with that is the awakening of the self-cognition and of the feeling of self-worth, as well as further significant self-instructions and many other things. There is also a concurrent, deliberate training in dealing with problems, from which a training in problem-solving must result. All of these required measures can hardly be worked out and applied with self-therapy, which is why they must be worked out and applied by an expert, and indeed specifically in relation to the disturbed psyche of the human being concerned and his or her symptoms. However, first and foremost, all this necessitates a thorough and precise diagnosis, as a result of which it can then first be decided which methods and therapies can and may be used for the specific case. Therefore, it is completely absurd to simply assume from that a purely positive thinking could resolve and heal those kinds of serious cases of psychical disorders. In that regard, the psychologists, psychiatrists, psychoanalysts, and psychotherapists, and certain philosophers are completely right. In such cases, purely positive thinking cannot actually be the one and only valid method for resolving and healing the psychical disturbance. Nevertheless, however, positive thinking is absolutely justified in the entire process of the resolving and healing, as has already been explained several times. Without the involvement of positive thinking, no recovery and no healing of the ill psyche can be achieved, because it is by means of the might of the thoughts that the feelings must necessarily be influenced and formed in a neutral, positive, equalized way, which then, in turn, correspondingly influence the psyche and reshape its condition, in this case from a diseased condition to a better and healthy one. As it is with other illnesses, every therapist cannot in every case be right and useful with a psychical injury. Just as somatic illnesses and suffering require the most varied medicines, that is also the case for psychical injuries, disorders, and actual diseases. Thus, it is the case that with certain illnesses, certain medications can be contraindicated. Consequently, under certain circumstances, more harm than success comes about. That is also the case with particular methods and therapies in regard to psychical suffering. Every form of suffering requires a specific therapy. Indeed, in regard to the psychotherapeutic processes as well as the forming and use of positive thinking, it cannot always be that only one single method is thereby necessary, rather several of them may be necessary. If, for example, the cause of the psychical disease exists on several levels, then that means that a multi-layered treatment is also required, whereby perception, thinking, and recognition are, however, also included in it, but only as a part of the entire therapy. This applies quite especially when the thoughts and feelings no longer harmonize with each other, and therefore do not work in synchronization with each other, whereby, as a rule, also one's behavior and physical states are disturbed.